Good morning, lovelies. Today we are going to do a complete walkthrough of the hero's journey and the 8 character archetypes that you meet along the way. Now, one of the first questions that you may have is, what is the hero's journey? This is a storytelling theory by American author Joseph Campbell sometime around the early 20th century about how stories, especially Western stories, are structured. The hero's journey is considered one of the most effective ways of structuring a story for a Western audience. Because it's one of the oldest storytelling theories that we have, it has gone through several variations and translations over the years. The one that we are going to be using is written by Christopher Vogler in his Writer's Journey book, which I highly recommend every author have on their shelf, whatever genre you are writing. I like this one because it's simplified and streamlined and also gives you more wiggle room to add or subtract or swap out whatever you need. And that's a key point here because this is not a rule book. While every story should have some parts like the climax, other parts can be rearranged or skipped entirely as your story needs. And you also definitely don't need all 8 character archetypes to pop up. Often they are combined or swapped out for events, creatures, settings, instead of flesh and blood characters. The point of this video is to give a very basic understanding of what the hero's journey is. Once you know what the rules are, then you can break them. Now, before we get started, remember to subscribe to the channel for more videos on science fiction, fantasy, and horror through a feminist lens. If you would like early access to these videos, as well as access to the Discord server and other free bonus content, join us on Patreon. We would love to have you. That link is in the description. And if you just want this spiffy DZA mug, that's also linked in the description. So as I mentioned earlier, there are 8 character archetypes that show up in the hero's journey. The hero, the mentor, the ally, the trickster, the threshold guardian, the herald, the shapeshifter, and the shadow. The hero is the hero. It's the main character. They're the character that our audience most closely identifies with. We follow them from the very start to the very end of this story. They grow and transform the most out of any of the characters. This type of growth that they see is largely defined by their flaw. The crux of the story, whatever it is actually about, is will they overcome this flaw or be defeated by it? And because it's the hero's journey, they almost always overcome it. This is not the type of story structure to be used for tragedies. The hero's flaw can be a lie that they believe, a personality problem, crippling grief over a lost loved one, whatever. It is the psychological crux of the story, the B plot, which is the more human aspect. In almost any given story, you have the A plot and the B plot. The A plot is what the story is advertised as. It's what draws your attention to it, especially if it's something like science fiction and fantasy. It's the zombie apocalypse, an alien invasion, going to magic school. That is the shiny, glittery, like, we need to stop this army, we need to explore this magical world. The B plot is the subplot, but it's critical. It's what gives the story meat and meaning. It's not just can these characters survive the zombie apocalypse, but can they overcome their trust issues enough to trust in each other to survive the zombie apocalypse. The B plot is what makes us connect with the story and the hero. Sometimes you get a group of heroes who have to overcome the same obstacle or flaw, usually having to learn how to get over their individual selfishness and issues in order to work together as a team. Next up, we have the ally. No one can do a quest alone, you need support. That's where the ally comes in. Heroes often have multiple allies, people with various skills that they need to accomplish their task. Sometimes an individual ally will only exist in the story long enough to do the thing and then get killed off or just leave the story basically. Other allies are right there with the hero from beginning to end. The relationship between the allies and the hero can vary widely. Sidekicks, siblings, parents, classmates, frenemies, whatever. How your hero interacts with their allies and vice versa provides the meat of their character and also plays a critical role in the B plot. Next on our list is the mentor. This is the character that guides the hero and their allies along their journey. Sometimes it's by giving them gifts or tools that they need. Sometimes it's words of wisdom or encouragement. Sometimes it's smacking some sense into our idiot hero. Mentors have their own set of archetypes. Actually, each of these archetypes have their own set of archetypes, but mentors especially. You have the classic elderly mentor who can't be the hero themselves because they're too old or sick, and they usually end up dead. You have the child mentor, you have the villain mentor, which often doubles as the shadow, more on that later. That one always ends up dead. The mentor is probably gonna die. We all know this. But sometimes they don't. Next up is the Threshold Guardian. The Threshold Guardian acts as the hero's first test, usually popping up during or immediately after the transition into Act 2, into the special, fun, exciting world where we spend about 80 to 90% of the story. More on that later. But sometimes the Threshold Guardian isn't always the first test, or even the only test. Often you get multiple Guardians at multiple thresholds, increasing in difficulty and badassery the closer they get to the villainous showdown. If they're an actual character, they're usually a henchman or lieutenant of the main villain. Sometimes the hero can turn them into allies, or just kill them. Sometimes these Threshold Guardians double as the Herald. The Herald marks a significant change in the hero's life, usually the catalyst or warning about the catalyst. This can be the villain burning down the hero's village, the mentor telling the hero to get off their ass, some totally different character warning that shit's about to get real. It can be an event instead of a person, someone's death, a natural disaster, a news report, whatever. If it signals, or it is the major first act change for our hero and their world, that's the Herald. Now we have the Shapeshifter. This one's kind of hard to pin down, because they're a shapeshifter. This is the character who changes the most in the hero's view. Their purpose in the story is often to bring doubt or more suspense, especially in the B-plot. The heroes have to ask themselves, is this character trustworthy? Most often, they are portrayed as the love interest. She and the hero start out as antagonistic, or maybe friends, and as lovers. Shapeshifting. Other shapeshifters may start as enemies and end as allies, or start as allies and end up as enemies. They don't necessarily have to change themselves, just the hero's perspective of them does. So if you have a character who's, say, always been evil, has been undermining the hero this entire time, but putting on a friendly face, and the hero and audience don't know about it until well into the second act, that's your shapeshifter. Next up is the Trickster. This is the archetype of mischief, change, and total chaos. They are the comic relief character. They are most often an ally, sometimes they're the villain, other times they are a neutral third party. Sometimes they themselves are the hero, combining the two archetypes. They bring the audience much needed relief in a very intense story. Finally, the Shadow. This is our villain, or at least the antagonist. This is someone or something for our hero to go against and triumph over. However, a good shadow is not just the villain, but a greater force symbolized by the villain. For a very classic example, Darth Vader is not the only force that Luke Skywalker has to deal with in Star Wars. The hero also has to win against his own inner struggle against the dark side. And that's the real shadow. Defeating Vader and the Emperor is symbolic of Luke's more personal defeat of his own personal dark side. That is the A plot meeting the B plot, right there. Now that we've met our character archetypes, let's talk about the actual hero's journey that they're all about to go on. So the hero's journey is often divided into the 3-act story structure, and that's exactly what we're going to do today. Act 1 opens with the ordinary world. This is your hero's starting point. The idyllic village, the normal high school, the world pre or even post-apocalypse, whatever. It is wherever your hero starts before their journey. Their starting point can be happy or sad, they can be miserable or content. Either way, something is missing from the hero's life. Their flaw is causing problems, even if they don't see it. Eventually, something's gonna give, which is where the story takes place. When that give comes, it's the call to adventure. Time to go on a quest. The island is dying. Monsters are attacking. Something is happening. Maybe it's sudden, maybe it's slow, but the way our hero is currently living is now unsustainable. This is where your Herald pops up. It indicates that it is time for our hero to get off their ass and get going. But sometimes the hero doesn't want to go, and they transition to the refusal of the call. The hero doesn't think anything is wrong with their life. They don't see the threat. They don't want to change. Now, sometimes the refusal of the call isn't actually refusal. The hero is going. They're just taking this time in the story to scout out the area, gather their allies, get their supplies, whatever they need to do. Sometimes the hero wants to go, but other characters tell them no. Well-intentioned friends and family try to talk them out of it, because let's face it, these quests are usually dangerous. In that instance, they are acting as the first threshold guardians that the hero has to overcome. Moana is actually a pretty interesting example of this, because she wants to go. She has that talk with her parents who try to convince her not to go, and then she goes for it anyway because, like, they need the fish, the island is dying, let's move, and then she gets her ass kicked by the ocean, and then washes up on the beach, is like, alright, that's it, I'm out. But what changes her mind again is the meeting with the mentor. The mentor pops up to give the hero whatever they need to get moving. Weapons, advice, a kick in the pants. Sometimes the hero will intentionally seek out the mentor to get some training or wisdom before going on their quest. Sometimes the mentor is actually working with the villain and they need the hero to go on this quest for their own shadier reasons. Whatever the reason, whatever the order, whatever the circumstances, at some point in the first act or at the early second act, the hero meets up with the mentor. And then we cross the first threshold. We are now officially moving from Act 1 to Act 2, going from the ordinary world to the special other world. We have arrived at Hogwarts. We've left our desert home planet and are going to rescue the princess in outer space. We've run away from the island and stolen a boat. We are officially at the point of no return. The special other world is whatever crazy set of circumstances the hero has found themselves in as of Act 2. Sometimes it is literally another world. Sometimes it's the big city that our small town hero has to navigate. Sometimes it's outer space or the open ocean or an aquarium. It is the setting of the hero's quest, and it can be as big or small as the story demands. All that's really required is that for the hero, it's new and challenging and probably a little dangerous. We usually meet more Threshold Guardians at this point, trying to block the hero's path. But any hesitation that the hero had on starting this quest have been swept away. The hero may be scared or uncertain, they're only human, but at this point, the reasons for doing the quest outweigh all of that. So now we're in Act 2, and we're hitting the point that Vogler calls tests, allies, and enemies. This is not a single story beat, or even a single scene. It's more of a long sequence of various scenes and episodes that are putting our hero to the test. They are gathering more allies, they are defeating villainous henchmen, they are collecting other tools that they may need for their quest. This is the hero's first time in the special other world, and quite possibly some of their allies' first time too. They have to learn the rules and adjust to the terrain. It's a huge shock, running into problems and issues that they've never even heard of, never mind had to deal with before, and different characters are going to react differently. Eventually, though, the characters must approach the Inmost Cave. The Inmost Cave is the whole reason that the heroes are on this journey in the first place, or at least it's a key piece of it. It's Princess Leia trapped on the Death Star, the magical item required to defeat the villain. It's an unavoidable step on their quest, but that is a major operation that the hero needs to prepare for, and the preparation part is this bit. The approach to the Inmost Cave is Tom Cruise and his team planning their mission. It's Dorothy and her friends evading even more Threshold Guardians to get into the lair of the Wicked Witch of the West. It's Moana and Maui climbing up to the entrance of the Land of the Monsters. Usually this isn't longer than a single scene, unlike the Ordeal. This is one of the most intense parts of the story, and it is placed either at the midway point or 2/3 of the way through, depending on the writer's needs. Sometimes you get two ordeals, one at the midway point and the other at the end of Act 2. Vogler actually has a pretty neat diagram here. So this is, there you go. So this is kind of the part that we're talking about. We've hit Act 1, and now we're halfway through Act 2, and this is the ordeal. And then once you hit the end of Act 2, you kind of hit another ordeal, and then the climax of Act 3. But other stories make it look like this, where you've got, there's the climax, the Cadillacs here, and then the ordeal at the end of Act 2, and then the climax at the end of Act 3. Different stories will have it structured different ways. One of the greatest themes of the ordeal is death. It might be a symbolic death, or a character's actual death. Usually the mentor. The reason the ordeal is such an ordeal is because the stakes are so high. We need the princess or Maui's fishhawk in order to do the rest of the journey. If the heroes get it too easily, that's not much of a story. Do not confuse this with the climax. That is something different. After the total chaos of the ordeal, the audience and the characters need a moment to just breathe and absorb the consequences of what just happened. Vogler calls this the reward. The characters celebrate their victory and or mourn the death of their lost allies. At this point in the story, the heroes might even think that they're done, but the audience will see that the villain is still alive and preparing a counterattack. Or the heroes thought they were done, but during the ordeal they found out about a new threat, and at this point now have to decide whether or not to fight that threat or go back home. It's also a moment of reflection for the hero, specifically about their flaw that's been causing them such problems throughout the story. Maybe they failed in their ordeal because of their flaw. Basically, it's a beat for everyone to catch their breath and ask, what the hell just happened? Before moving on to Act 3. This part of the story is called The Road Back, and it's the transition from Act 2 to Act 3. Though it's called The Road Back, it's not always the road back home. It's kind of like the approach to the Inmost cave, except now we're heading toward the final battlefield. Sometimes it's an intense chase scene, the villain having caught up with their heroes during the break and is now out for revenge. Sometimes it includes its own second ordeal, and that's usually the darkest moment. In Moana, the road back was Maui and Moana's first attempt at going for the Te Island. They failed. Maui abandons the quest, and Moana gets a boost from her dead grandma before trying again, leading up to the resurrection, aka the climax. This is the most intense scene in the story, the final showdown, the big moment. The stakes are at their highest. If the hero fails here, everything will have been for nothing. It's like a second, sometimes third, more extreme ordeal. If the midway ordeal was your hero's midterm exams, the resurrection is their final exams. Your hero is now able to apply whatever moral they had to learn earlier in the story at this point to defeat the shadow. If they needed to go through the ordeal in order to get the magic item or superpower or whatever, this is where we really see them use it. This takes up most of Act 3, culminating in the hero defeating the shadow. Finally, we return with the Elixir. This is the fallout of the climax. The hero returns home, if that's in the cards, or starts a new home. It's the happy ending. Dark Lord defeated, island saved, hero happy. We are wrapping up all the loose ends. The elixir can be something physical or visible, like the safety of the island, or it can be something far more personal. The lesson that the hero learned in order to become stronger, happier, more fulfilled. That's the hero's journey and all the characters that we meet along the way. Like I said earlier, very little of this is actually ironclad. It's a loose set of guidelines to help you structure your story. Rearrange or skip over whatever you need. Let me know your favorite story that uses the hero's journey in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, hit like and subscribe for more like it. And if you would like your very own Dragon, Zombies, and Aliens mug, I've got that link in my merch store in the description of this video. I'll see you next time. Bye, lovelies!